As early as 6 o'clock on Wednesday morning, islanders and tourists, as well as Belize City residents, began seeking shelter, taking heed to the warnings that the then tropical storm Earl was to become a Category 1 hurricane before making landfall in Belize. Thousands of residents made their way to the 11 shelters that were opened across the north and south sides of the city. As the weather conditions began deteriorating further into the day, the threat was more real.
Since this morning, we have been seeing a lot of movements in terms of people coming in. So they're actually taking heed. There's on the first boat this morning at 6, there was like 3 boats that came in at the same time. At 6:30, there was like 4 boats. 7, there was like between 7 and 7:30, there was another like 4 boats. So there are movements, there are people that are leaving the island, they're taking heed.
I think there was probably more than 1,100 persons in the shelters up until last night. I stand to be corrected, it could be more, most definitely. At the last minute, even in doing the search and rescue operations, we still were taking persons to shelter. So again, in clear and present danger, we expose ourselves to some serious adverse conditions and risks, but at the end of the day, I'm quite satisfied that we maneuvered. There wasn't, at least to this point, to this end, there wasn't any loss of life.
But hours before the storm made landfall, the various hotlines were congested with distress calls. Persons whose homes were being affected, in some cases completely destroyed by the sustained hurricane winds that reached up to 75 plus miles per hour, were trapped either by rising waters or collapsed structures. The call started as early as 9 o'clock.
Last night going into the storm from about 9 o'clock, going straight through to this point where we are at, I received about 400 plus texts as it relates to the search and rescue team to perform and execute search and rescue duties. I also received a whole lot of phone calls for us to do the same. We did the best we could have. We managed and we coped. The winds was phenomenally strong, but we still persevered and persisted in doing the search and rescue exercise.
Most adversely affected were residents from the south side of Belize City. Assistant Commissioner Chester Williams and his officers, as well as firefighters, were instrumental in the many rescue missions to help persons who were exposed to the elements.
In Belize City, we began responding to distress calls from as early as 9 o'clock. And that went right through until 4 this morning. Now, with the officers out on the streets patrolling, sometime after 7, I withdrew my foot, motorcycle, and static patrols because of the inclement nature of the weather at that particular moment. It was raining intensely, and the streets were beginning to take water. And we just maintained our vehicular patrols because those officers in the vehicle would have some degree of shelter to be able to be out there while the storm is coming. And it was a part of our operational strategy that at least about an hour to half an hour before the storm is expected to make landfall in Belize City, that we would have withdrawn our mobile patrols so as to remove our officers from the peril of the storm. But with all the distress calls that are coming in, the officers were unable to be withdrawn from the streets.
But public officers and volunteer groups from the various NGOs were exposed to the elements and also put their lives in danger. And according to SEMA coordinator Philip Willoughby, although combined they were successful in removing many persons from their homes, residents must not take things for granted.
I must say though that it was rather difficult to navigate with the waters, the flood, the wind. Again, that was crazy, but we did the best we could have done, and I think we did exceptionally well. My concern is now to residents of Belize City. Don't take these things for granted.
One of the things that I was very encouraged by is that many people call the hotline, the CMO hotline last night, wanting to be evacuated. At certain points, it was difficult for us to dispatch any person, but we heard reports coming in early this morning that neighbors welcomed family members into their home. And that is the Belizean spirit that we're looking forward to bring our country back to 100% operation.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.